All right, today we're looking at the Krytac Kriss Vector AEG internals. I'm going to show you guys a quick teardown. We're going to kind of do this real time so you can go through what's inside the actual gun itself. Now this one, heads up real quick, I've already taken the spring guide and the spring out, and that's already gone because that's part of the actual body itself. So those will come out, takes all the tension off of the system, as well as this one, since it is one of the samples here, does not have the motor installed. So the motor would be in here inverted as well. And of course I'm showing some photos real quick so you guys can see what all that looks like. So we're going to start with this, we're going to start breaking it down. So we got quite a few screws to work with. All you're going to need to get started is a Phillips head screwdriver. That's going to be your main tool to get everything taken apart. No Allen keys or anything else crazy required. Moving up to these two big ones up here. This is for the front section, barrel assembly. There are different screws. We're going to flip it over. You can actually flip once you're done there. We've got two more here on this side. And I'm going to talk about a couple features here real quick as I get these last ones off for you. There we go. So if you noticed, at that point, with that last one, we got tension off the barrel assembly. So you won't have to take the other screws I took out to get to your inner barrel assembly, which is a good design. So actually that holds everything in place. It's 4 screws, so once you access the mech box itself, from getting it out of the shell, you'll be able to get to this. On this, you're looking at a spring-loaded. You do have the new rotary style hop up here, which is, you know, the quintessential Krytac style. This one will of course have the number markings as well, and of course the inner barrel with a O-ring here on the end to keep the vibration and centering down. So the barrel assembly comes right off, no big deal. So if you have to do any work on that, you don't have to get all the way into the mech box to do it. I know that'll be one of the first questions I get. Also, the second question, I want to show you this part before I get this last screw out of the way here. This piece here, this is the motor cage. The motor actually sits inverted in this. And in fact, let me get it so I can get it on the camera so you guys can see that. So this piece here is your motor cage at the top. Now, like you see here, there's no motor inside. If you take one of these screws out, the bottom one here, which I've already removed ahead of time, it's this right down there where my pinky is. That one, you can actually swing the motor cage up, and that's going to allow you to access the motor itself, get to it again without having to take the mech box itself apart, which is nice. You don't have to take all these other screws, all these right here, and none of these here that were for the barrel assembly. So actually it's just one screw and you'll be able to swing this thing up, access it. You can also loosen it. So you want to take this out, you can actually take the second one out if you like and just remove the motor cage that in there. Also, your motor adjustment is there on the end. So if you need to make any adjustments, again, you're going to be able to separate the upper and the lower and make those adjustments without having to take the shell out of the lower assembly. So with that done, we're going to work on these last bit screws here, get the last ones out. And what I like too is all the screws are the same in the mech box. So if you don't have to worry about remembering which one went into which hole, which is really nice. You have 2 types of screws. You have these longer ones and the shorter ones. They're both different threads, the actual diameter of the screw shaft itself. So you're not going to accidentally put the wrong one in the wrong place. Also, before we go cracking open, I want to talk about, there's the motor cage by the way. I want to talk about the externals here. You do the external of the actual mech box shell. You do have a small little micro switch here. This is part of the cutoff lever. So this, as the sector gear, which is right here inside, rotates, it's going to press on this piece and it's going to press that, I'm going to try to get it for you, that micro switch in. That sends signals up these yellow cables into the board itself, this board here, which tells the actual motor or tells the system to stop rotating. So that's actually your cutoff lever. We're not dealing with a mechanical cutoff lever in this situation. We're dealing with an electronic system. Also, like I said, you've got the board here with the MOSFET. Between the way it matches with the upper and lower receiver, it has these clips, so it actually just sits and just clips right on. So it's not like a barrel pin or anything like that. It's also a patented design by Krytac on that one. MOSFET is part of this board assembly. The other components are part of the upper receiver, and that's where the fuse is located as well. So when you split the 2 parts, you'll be able to access the fuse very easily. It's not buried somewhere in the shell itself. So now we're done there. You'll have a little bit of a linkage piece in here, which I've already taken off, and that actually is for the way the air nozzle works in the feed. I'll show you that here in a second. And then we're going to slowly take this top off and get everything out. So now we've got the 2 parts of the mech box shell, and I'll try to get them all out here for you. Upper component, lower component. Gears, of course, are over in here. Now, you're going to ask me this question. I'm going to tell you again. You're looking, for the most part, in here, all standard version 2 components. The only thing you're going to have to deal with that's different in here is the actual air nozzle assembly here for the cylinder itself. Because they wanted to mimic the system and they had to put everything in to get it into the mech box shell, into the actual Vector itself. It was a very unique design, very challenging to do. To do that, they had to create this very special air nozzle system. So you see the piston fires this way. Here's the piston right here. It's firing up this way and has to route, and that's your air nozzle for feeding BBs. So the actual cylinder head itself is going to be a special component, and the way that works on that. With that, and that's the tappet plate as well, is going to be a little different. That's that linkage piece I was telling you about, those 2 components here, and I'll show you that. This goes on the outside of the mech box. It links these 2 components together because it is at kind of a 45-degree angle. So when you fire, it does this. The tappet plate moves and it moves that. So those actually moves those 2 components together. So the tappet plate is 2 parts. Well, 3 parts really. The linkage, which sits on the outside of the mech box shell, has an arrow showing you which way to put it. The component that matches up to the air nozzle itself, which is here, and then the other part of the tappet plate, which is here, which is traditional on the other end. So aside from that and that component, everything else you're looking at here is replaceable. So for those of you who want to go crazy with the upgrades, you can do that. It's not a problem. You can change your gear set. It's standard. They also went with standard bushings, steel bushings, not bearing bushings on this for the system. Also, everything's standard shims here, so there's no kind of crazy shimming or anything involved as well. Also in this, the bushings are made of tool steel. They're 8mm. They are not bearing on this, so they actually fit in there, nice hardened steel, so you're not going to be wearing these things out anytime soon. So those are going to be standard bushings, standard gear set, standard cylinder, standard piston, standard air nozzle as well, as long as you find the right length one as well. So you can swap pretty much any component you need in the compression system and the mechanics system in here, no problem at all. Also, motor is a standard motor. It is a short type motor on this, so you're going to be dealing with a regular short type motor. It is their 30K motor, which is their high torque that you get in the Trident series currently. So it is actually a very good motor, very torquey, and more than enough power to keep this thing going. All right, so I want to show you guys the board here real quick because this is kind of the guts and the brains of the system. The way it works is you have a couple different micro switches on here. We saw the one on the outside here a second ago that actually sends the signal in, and that is for the actual cutoff lever to show for like the rotation of these gears. Up here on the top, you have this one that actually has 2 little switches. This actually controls your semi, 2-round burst, and full auto functionality. So as you rotate that, it presses down one or both of these and puts it in the right mode, or one or the other one. So it lets you know, nothing depressed is semi-auto fire. One depressed on one side is 2-round burst. The other one will give you full auto as well. One more micro switch here on this side. This one here is your actual trigger itself. So a micro switch trigger also is part of this MOSFET board control assembly. And then of course the MOSFET itself is right there if you guys can see. Everything has wiring. They all run out. The red and black wires that go to the motor are hardwired and soldered on here. However, the switch that goes off for the cutoff lever does have a micro plug, a small plug in there where you can actually remove it. All the wiring is neatly routed through channels here, so you're not going to have anything kind of sitting out and exposed in your mech box on the outside as you put it back together to catch it. Rounding out everything, shell itself is made of cast aluminum. It's actually not that heavy at all. The gears, again, are going to be your standard offering here of their premium line of the like Trident series type gears. And then of course your piston is going to be the same as well. It does have a few metal teeth, which people always ask about, so they're the most important components to pick up with the last tooth removed, so you have good angle engagement here as you pick it up, and you're not going to have that one wear out on you as well. So all in all, you're looking at very compatible components with the exception of just a couple in here, which are like totally necessary with this linkage system to make this system work for you. If you want to change your cylinder out to something different, it's not a problem. All that can happen. And if you want to make any adjustments to any of the other components, for example, the bushings, the shims, the gears, the cylinder, like I talked about before, the air nozzle, all that's going to be compatible, including doing motor upgrades as well with the short type motor. So pretty much that's the teardown. If you guys want to see or have seen the full internals of this. Oh, there's one more thing I want to talk about here too. So quick footnote, I want to show you guys something real fast. When I built it, when I took it apart, I showed you everything over here because they actually left me with this to do it by myself, just to walk through it for the very first time since it was raw and fresh. But on rebuild side, you're going to want to put the components in back together. Make sure that the actual board side with the actual MOSFET is your downside to make sure everything's right. It's going to allow you to put the Tappet Plate spring and everything back on here the correct way. That's the important part. So I did show you the teardown over here with all the gears, and in fact, if you want to see the lever here and some other components. But when you do reassemble it, just kind of a quick footnote here, you're going to want to put the components in on this side with the board as your build side, and then this is your top shell as well. One more thing people ask with all these electronics in here is what happens if you have an issue with your battery? Let's say you get a short in the system, something happens, you've pinched a wire somehow, or you've cut it when you've been working on it. The way this works, so up here is your fire selector, and that's the 3-stage I was telling you about that moves those 2 different plugs, those 2 different micro switches I was showing you. Well, here is your basically fire and safety. So with that, you have fire and safety on this. When this is engaged into fire, you're able to pull the trigger back and you're actually able to shoot things. But when you actually move it forward, you can't pull the trigger forward. But there's more to this than that. So you'll have this and you can kind of hear that trigger. By the way, the pull on this, I just want to tell you, is like right at the very end. So if you guys are going to be fast on the finger, it's going to be great. But when you move it this way, you can't move this. But in addition, they have a physical switch inside of here that cuts off the battery from sending any juice to the board itself, to that electronic component. So once you flip that switch, nothing is getting over to this. And that's important if you have an issue. Let's say your gun has a runaway problem, there's a problem with your motor, something happens. They went ahead and thought of this, and you have a short in your system, or your battery is bad, like right that. As soon as you flip it over into safe, it's gonna disconnect your battery power into your gun. So if you're having any kind of runaway issues, you're not gonna have to worry about trying to pop the bottom off and unplug the battery. It does exactly the same thing, which I thought was a really neat piece of engineering they added, and that component is in the upper receivers, not part of the mech box itself. So pretty much that is everything you see here. If you have any questions about this, the Krytac AEG full mech box teardown, how this works, any comments, I'd love to see it in the comment section below. If you guys are planning on doing upgrades on this, I want to hear about what your upgrades are going to be and how you're going to do it. Are you going like something crazy high speed? You're going to keep it stock? Are you going to go like high torque and go crazy and put, you know, a longer inner barrel in and make it a Vector DMR? I mean, who knows what you're going to do? I want to hear about all that in the comment section below. So again, thanks everybody. Until next time, go out, play some Airsoft, have some fun, but no matter what you do, call your freaking hits.